In the last couple of months, a couple of dams have failed in Burma, or we can turn this around and say that a couple of rivers have broken through some of their constraints in Burma. And there have been numerous articles about it. And something I find interesting and disheartening is that even on so-called environmental or ecological websites, this is presented only in human terms and industrial terms. It's presented in terms of the trauma for the uh, the humans in the villages who were displaced or those who were killed. And yes, the humans who were killed is a tragedy, and I mean that in the classic sense of sort of an inevitable result of bad decisions and tragic flaws. And the tragic flaw in this case is hubris. Another tragic flaw is the belief that you can control nature with no repercussions. And what I find unfortunate is that those who were killed were innocent people living their lives and not those who planned and constructed and benefit from the dam. But what I really want to focus on is that even on ecological and environmental websites or newspapers, not once did I see mentioned the perspective of the river. And not once did I see mentioned that dams destroy rivers. And not once did I see mentioned that the villages inundated by the creation of the dam, or the humans or non-humans displaced. And my point on this is to highlight how completely the perspective of the natural world and its members is absent from every bit of our discourse. If there were websites and newspapers written by rivers, the headline would not be that a dam failed, but it would be, here is one river becoming a little bit free. Another thing to remember about all of this is I was talking to someone 12, 13 years ago, a fisheries biologist who works on a river she loves up in the Olympic Peninsula. And one of the things she said to me, and I've mentioned this before, but I think it's incredibly important, is that the river she loves is not dammed and it floods. And every time there's a flood, she says it breaks her heart because of all the salamanders and the trees and everybody else who dies. By the way, non-human life, the non-humans who died in the flood from the collapse of the dam were not mentioned in the articles, of course, even on environmental places. And anyway, she said that every time a river floods, and rivers flooding is absolutely natural, and that's all the breaking of a dam is a big flood. Anyway, she said that every time the river floods and changes course, it breaks her heart because of all the fish and everybody else who die in this. And at the same time, she said, every time the river floods, it makes her really happy because this is what rivers do, and that's how new habitat is created. And every time a river floods and changes course, she said, it is short-term habitat loss versus long-term habitat gain. And with any flood from a dam breaking, yes, there will be short-term habitat loss for long-term habitat gain. And we also have to recognize that there are, in the United States, 60,000 dams over 13 feet tall and 60,000 dams over 13 feet tall, 70,000 dams over 6.5 feet tall. And I believe that there are 2 million dams total in the United States. I could be wrong on that. But anyway, every dam in the world is going to fail. And every dam in the world must fail for those rivers to survive. And this is something we all need to recognize. And from the perspective of the world, a dam failure is short-term habitat loss for long-term habitat gain. And of course, this is true not just of dams, but it's true also of highways, cities. These are blights on the planet, and they are, in the long sense, phantoms, and they will disappear. And the sooner they disappear, the more life is left on this planet for this planet. And that's part of what I want to say. But the other part of what I want to emphasize is that I think one of the most important things we can do, one of the first things that we should do is to make our allegiance to the natural world absolute. And so that's my complaint here, is that the coverage of this was all from the perspective of industrial humans, the perspective, and secondarily from some non-industrial humans. But who speaks for the river? And who speaks for the land harmed by solar facilities, for that matter? Who speaks for the land harmed by cities? And we need, if we are to survive, our lives are dependent upon this planet. And so are the lives of blue whales and Mekong catfish and everyone else. And if we collectively, and we particularly as a species, are to survive, one of the things that must happen is that we must make the perspective of the world primary. And we must speak for, we must allow Delta Smelt to speak through us. And unfortunately, we live in a culture where we don't know how to listen to them at all. And thus, it is necessary for at least some of us humans, and one would hope all of us humans, to learn to perceive the world from their perspective, and to speak that perspective, and to enact that perspective, and to act on that perspective.